Good morning, everyone. Just I think we'll kind of hit on a bunch of the topics once the questions start getting fired out there, Jerry. So let's just go ahead.
Okay, sounds real good. We'll open up the. I'm sorry, I didn't know if I was on mute or not. We're going to open up this morning with Jared Smalley from WCMH Channel 4 with Nathan Baird on deck. Jared?
Hey, good morning, Coach. I wanted to ask you about the unique situation this year with the NFL draft. You're now a week away from the first round. And can you just take us through obviously there's no pro day this year. There were not many face-to-face discussions with teams about your players. Can you take us through how that process has gone, the unusual nature of what you've tried to do to help your guys get picked as high as they can and to give the teams the information they need?
Yeah, I would say that, it's been a higher rate of calls, I think, for, Coach Mick, myself, the assistant coaches, some different requests about, just questions about who they are and whether it's position coaches, head coaches, GMs, personnel, just fielding a lot more questions about the guys since, they don't have pro days and, not able to spend much time with them in person. So, I think that's probably the biggest thing is just, fielding a lot of questions. And it seems like a lot of the people in the NFL are just using the college coaches, strength coaches and different people in the program to gather information.
And Ryan, as a follow-up to that, just about Joe and the very likely, situation that he's in as a number one pick potentially next week. How many calls have you taken from teams about him and your insight in his development as a player?
I don't know exactly the number, but certainly when people ask about our guys, they bring up Joe. And, I don't think everybody in the league is asking questions about him, but there's obviously a certain few. And obviously all the feedback's been very, very positive. And, just asking about who he is as a person and all those things. And, obviously we have nothing but the highest praise for him and his work ethic and his ability to play. And so, I think he's going to have a really good draft.
Next up, Nathan Baird from Cleveland.com with Austin Ward on deck. Nathan?
Hey, Ryan. Obviously, you guys announced Trey Sermon this morning. Can you go into more detail about what it is about him that you wanted to bring into the program besides just adding some depth at running back?
Yep. Well, as you know, Master getting hurt here in the spring, put us behind the eight ball a little bit in terms of depth, and then Marcus Crowley coming off the ACL. So when Trey became available, we did a lot of research, made a lot of calls. The people of Oklahoma had such great things to say about him. But we know we played against him and we saw what he could do on the field. He's a really good player. But off the field, just again, the people who know him have such great things to say about him. Very good student. He was a academic, all Big 12. So we thought that it was hard because we don't really have an opportunity to spend face-to-face time with him. But we did the best we could through teleconferencing and kind of the way these last couple of months have been during the quarantine. And, start to build that relationship up and have been very, very impressed with our conversations with him. It's great to get a mature young man like Trey in the program. And I know our team's going to, take him with welcome arms. And I've just been very impressed too with the running back room and how they've already, really taken him in, and that goes to show you the culture of our team.
What assurances did you have to get either from him or somewhere else as far as his own injury situation? Because obviously I assume your own doctors wouldn't have had a chance to look at him at all the way maybe you would have if it was a conventional official visit situation set up.
Yeah, it's one of those things now more than ever. Just this transfer thing is kind of the way college football is going. We obviously saw that last year with Jonah Jackson and Joe Burrow, and And Oklahoma was very, very forthcoming and great communication with everybody there. And so, we had to, ask some questions, about a lot of things. And everything that came back, really positive. And so, we felt really good about this.
Next up, Austin Ward from Lettermen Row with Tom Van Aaron on deck. Austin?
Hey, Ryan, thanks for your time. On that first day of spring camp, when you guys got rolling, you were talking about having, Justin and a quarterback for the second year, and that you never had that opportunity. How important was the spring camp in that sort of development, and what do you think Justin missed on those 12 workouts?
I don't think that spring practice is going to set Justin too far back. Certainly, we would have liked to get those reps under his belt, but we still have preseason camp, and he has a whole season under his belt. Where I think it's going to be felt more is with the other guys. The two guys who were freshmen. With Gunner, just building depth in that room. I think that's really where we were looking forward to coming out of the spring. With a lot of reps under their belt. And I don't think that, a spring would have really made that much of a difference with Justin. But certainly it would have helped. But knowing that we're going to have preseason and those type of things leading into the season will allow him to get those reps under his belt. But there's nothing like playing a whole season, and that's the big thing. And so he's got that, experience behind him, and I think that's what's most important.
When you're at home and, you described that you've got a little more free time and you're not, watching Tiger King, you're probably done with that, obviously. So how much sitting around, like just daydreaming, doodling up plays, and thinking about what else you could do with Justin that you weren't, maybe didn't do in year one with him, how much of that is going on?
A little bit, but what I've found is that as much as you think you're going to have a lot of free time, it really isn't that free because, there's just a lot of calls to be made. You're on the phone a lot, so it's not as efficient as when you're at the facility where you can just kind of, bounce around and the communication. You can have a bunch of people together at once, and you're just more productive when you're in the workplace. So, there is some of that going on, but not as much as I thought maybe going into it. There's just, a lot of recruiting calls, a lot of conference calls, a lot of meetings with our players. Just a lot of things come up during the day, and before you know it, your day's kind of eaten up. And then you still have to take breaks because, you're kind of on these conference calls or on these phone calls for most of the day. And when we watch film, as an offensive or defensive staff, it just isn't as efficient. But there is, there's certainly some more free time. And, during that time, we're going to try to use that and utilize it to enhance the scheme. But not having a spring is hard. It's one thing to come up with plays. It's another thing for the guys to learn them and get good at them. So, obviously as we come out of this thing, we'll get a better feel for what that looks like and then just kind of enhance it as time goes on.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next up, Tom Van Aaron from ESPN.com with Bill Rabinowitz on deck. Tom?
Thank you, Jerry. Hi, Ryan. I've had some coaches express some concern about the early signing period with this extended dead period. I just wanted to see what concerns do you have with the recruiting cycle with the early signing period, and if the dead period is extended further, and if there, for you, is there a cutoff for where you think it's too late to try to ask kids to sign in December if the dead period does get extended?
No, I don't see an issue with the early signing date because if people don't feel comfortable signing at that point, then they shouldn't. And they still have all the way to February. They still have an option, so I don't know why we would change the early signing date. It's their choice. If they feel great about it, then they sign at that moment. If they don't, then they just sign in February. So we've given them two options, and so I'm in favor of just keeping it the way it is.
Do you have any concerns with the recruiting cycle as a whole, though? With I know getting kids on campus for unofficial visits is important, and now it's cutting into the official visits for the spring. Is that a concern for either this class or even the future class with unofficial visits?
Yeah, it's going to set us back a little bit. But it's as long as it's the same for everybody, then I think we'll all be okay coming out of this thing. But certainly, for the families, they won't maybe be able to take several visits to a school. Some of them are probably only going to be able to get to a school maybe once or sometimes twice during the recruiting process, which is, something new. Usually most guys will be there 3-4 times. I think it's going to work its way out. And again, I think that, we'll be in a very different place a month from now, 2 months from now. And so we'll kind of adapt. Okay. But recruiting is so sped up that a lot of these guys, they've been on our campus already and they got a good feel for who we are. So, again, as long as it's the same for all teams, then I don't think it's going to have much of an impact other than maybe they aren't going to get as many times on campus.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Next up, Bill Rabinowitz from the Columbus Dispatch with Dan Hope on deck. Bill?
Hi, Ryan. I asked you, I think, a version of this last time, but things seem to be either slowed down or sped up so much these days. How much concern now is there? Have you thought more about the possibility of at least an alter season or a cancel season? And what's your kind of mindset about that? Is it the same as it was before?
Yeah, it is. I think there's been more conversations about what some options are, and we're doing that on a weekly basis and trying to, give our input. But certainly it's going to come down to the different task forces and committees that have come together and the medical authorities on where we start with this. And that's really where it begins. And then from there, we're going to have to kind of, as football coaches, give our input and then try to figure it all out. But, the first concern is public health and the student athletes, welfare and well-being. And so we have to start with that. And then once we kind of get those guidelines of return to play, return to work, then we can kind of start building that. But yeah, I think we have to look at all different options. I think there's a lot of smart people in the world. There's a lot of smart people in college football and the NCAA. And I think we'll come up with a great solution if we put our minds to it. But there's just so many still unknowns. It's hard to move anything. I do think we can create some models of different plans based on return to play. But I still think it's too early on that. And so I think the best thing to do is keep talking this thing through and keep everything as up to date as possible. And then once some decisions are made and we get a better feel for where this is going, then we can make some quick decisions.
This is still unprecedented, obviously. You've never approached a season not knowing if there's going to be a season or what it might look like. Just what's it like for you, just that situation? It's
hopefully a once in a lifetime thing. It's a very unique situation that, we just try to do the best we can day in and day out. I kind of feel like once we got done with the season and we got into spring ball, that was kind of the first time in about 2 years where I took a half a deep breath and was like, okay, I'm kind of getting my feet in the ground here, with everything 2 years ago and then first year as a head coach and everything going on there. And then, we get 3 practices in spring out of the way and here comes the quarantine. So it's just kind of been almost the way, it's been for the last 3 years, which is let's do the best we can to maximize today because, tomorrow we're not quite sure what's going to happen. And so, we're good at that. I think that our staff's doing an excellent job. We have unbelievable communication right now with our players through Zoom and phone calls with the parents and parents meetings on Zoom. And I couldn't give any higher praise to our staff and what our support staff's doing in recruiting and Ryan Stamper in development, Nick Marotti in strength and conditioning, and our assistant coaches. We're kind of built this way, and so we just keep working through it and put 1 week in front of the other, and then hopefully as we come out of this thing, we pass the test because that's what's being challenged to our team, is that this is a test. It's a test of the team as a unit, as an individual, to get yourself better during this time without the influences of the coach and being at the Woody. So I don't know if that answers your question, but that's just some thoughts.
Okay. If I could sneak in one quick one about Chase Young and the draft. Obviously, he's going to go at the very top of the draft. What would you want to say about him, and what do you think he can be as an NFL player?
Well, I think he and Jeff both, are very, very high-end NFL players who will play a long time in the NFL. They're both great people, good leaders, very productive on the field. They play. They're tough. They play. I mean, they're durable. They don't miss practice. They don't miss games. They don't miss snaps. I mean, they just play. And so I think you're going to get a lot of production out of both of those players, and I think they're both can't miss guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next up, Dan Hope from 11 Warriors with Dave Biddle on deck. Dan?
Hey, Ryan, you just talked about the meetings that you've had and the communication you've had with your team. Just what are those meetings like? Are you talking, mostly about football stuff and strategy stuff, or are you talking a lot about, how to get through the situation and dealing with stuff off the field?
Well, we have different styles of meetings. The first one would be the team meeting. We'll have one actually coming up here at noon again. Last week, we had Dr. Borchers come on and explain to our team what COVID-19 is, and which was great. Just a really informational session. Today, we're going to have people from sports psychology and in the mental health area of our program speak to the team. And then just some general comments by Mick and I on those meetings, just to kind of give them updates on what's happening and then a little bit of encouragement on culture and different things like that. In the position meetings, it's a combination of football and then leadership and culture. And, you can only do so much football with the guys, so it's good to change up with motivational videos and motivational talks and talk about our culture and just different things based on the position group. Everybody's a little bit different, so guys have been very, very creative about that. And then there's the staff meeting, and those go twice a week where we meet and go through the whole team, go through all different areas of the program and have discussions on, any updates that are going on and recruiting and, things that are going on with the players to academics to each coach giving an update on their guys. So it's a lot. It's a lot of calls. It's a lot of listening. And I think it's going very well. I think we're handling it well. And I talk to the staff all the time that I think, the group and the organizations that can adapt the best during this time are going to come out of this thing the strongest. And so we're working on that.
I also wanted to ask you, have you gotten any answer back yet on C.J. Saunders and his status for the season?
We have not. No, we have not. And we're pushing on that, and we're hopeful to keep pushing on that to try to help him with more information so that we can, help him make a decision, because certainly we'd love to have him back.
Thanks, Ryan.
If I could encourage people to stay on mute until you're called upon. Next up, Dave Biddle from 24/7 Sports with Dennis Dodd on deck. Dave?
Thanks, Jerry, and thanks for doing this, Ryan. Ryan, I know guys like Justin Fields are working outside with personal coaches or personal trainers. I know some of the wide receivers are doing the same thing and some of the other guys. Is that something that you're telling all of your guys to try to do, to try to find someone to train with outside on a football field if they can?
I'm letting Mick and the strength coaches handle all that, because we really can't require, as coaches, them to do anything. We can give them some guidelines. The first thing we're telling them, though, is they need to follow the rules that are in place in their states. As there's kind of differing rules and guidelines in each area. So everybody's so unique. I mean, there's some people who are in the middle of the city, and then there's other guys who are out in the country with the field across the street. It's easy for them to just walk across the street and start running routes or throwing and catching with a family member or something like that. So everybody's so unique, but Mick and his staff are really handling all of that.
And back to the NFL draft real quick. You guys are going to flood the NFL draft again, it looks like. I know that kind of sells itself when it comes to recruiting, Ryan, but how much do you guys sell that to recruits, just the amount of players Ohio State puts in the NFL?
It's a big part. It's certainly not the only part, but we don't shy away from it. We're very proud, and part of our development. And I think when you look at, how many guys have developed in 3 years, 4 years, or 5 years, everybody has their own story, from Devon Hamilton to Jeff Okuda to J.K. Dobbins. I mean, everybody kind of has their own story in different development. Everybody has their own journey. But we're proud of our development, that guys don't only just get drafted, but they have great careers. When you look at Michael Thomas and the Boses and, Zeke Elliott, and the list goes on, that not only are they going to the NFL, but they're playing and they're having long careers. And that goes to, obviously, recruiting, but also our development in the strength and conditioning area, but then also in terms of football and our technique and the styles of offense and defense that we're running.
Thank you.
Next up, Dennis Dodd from CBSInteractive.com with Doug Lesmerises on deck. Dennis?
Hey, Ryan. I hope things are going well. Urban used to talk about transitioning, our recruits from loving them up in recruiting to then, having to get to their heads about the real world, but actually having to produce. In a transfer world where guys can transfer without penalty, it looks like it's coming. Are you and other coaches going to have to change your, just approach to coaching? You know what I'm talking about?
I do. You broke up a little bit at the beginning, but I know what you're asking. I think what it really is forcing us to do is communicate better. Something I believe in all along, and I tell our recruits all the time, is that you're going to get treated the way you're recruited, and that anything other than that is not going to work. And now more than ever, that's the case. And so I just think I have to be really, really honest in recruiting, and then give constant feedback once they're here, knowing that, the transfer world is kind of the new norm, and we have to adapt to it. It's like anything else in life. You can fight it, or you can adapt to it, and we're trying to adapt to it. And so we certainly hate to lose guys, but as long as we're communicating and telling people exactly where they stand, that gives us the best chance. I think when kids are surprised, or they think they're in a certain situation, and then they get to the fall and they're not playing, that's when there's hard feelings. And so, again, just making sure people know exactly where they stand. What's that?
I got to ask a follow-up too.
Yeah.
In recruiting, I'm sure you know a lot about your 21 class. Probably met a lot of their parents. As time goes on, do you have any concern about just having to recruit people online? You don't see their character, you don't know their character, you don't get to meet the family. If this goes on long enough, is that a concern?
Yeah, I don't actually, because I don't. When you look at the way the calendar is, or the way that we recruit nowadays, it's not that much different. I mean, we're not allowed to, when we go to the school of an underclassmen, we're not allowed to spend any time with them. We're not allowed to bump into them. We're not allowed to see them, really. So we don't really get a chance to meet with them in the schools or do any of those things anyways. We can watch them and evaluate them, but we're not allowed to have any communication or anything like that with them. We rely on the high school coaches. The one thing we are missing are the visits, where people can come and visit. But typically that's a day and a half, and we're going to try to make that up, with several calls and Zoom calls where you can look people in the eye. So, it's going to be a little bit of a disconnect, but I don't think it's going to be major.
Okay. Thank you.
Next up, Doug Lesmerises from Cleveland.com with Tim May on deck. Doug?
Hey, Ryan. We know their ADs are planning for the possibility of this situation putting a financial strain on athletic department. What is your general thought on the possible idea of football head coaches taking pay cuts? A lot of places, the head football coach is the highest paid person on campus. I know there's just a lot of things that probably are being considered. What do you think about that idea?
Well, I think, and certainly in times like this, we have to make sure we're thinking about others. I think that's very, very important. And I think, Gene's, philosophy that we have the resources to go help, people in the community is why Gene, Chris, and I have been donating to the community. I mean, obviously, you guys saw the one donation we made to the Ohio Food Bank, and among others. And so I think the idea is that during this time we got to do what we can to help those people, and taking that money and putting it back into the community. And so we're doing that, and I believe that as long as this goes on, we'll continue to do that. And I think that's it's a great philosophy to have, and I'm all on board.
There's also been discussion, Ryan, reports that surveys of ADs that they may be open to a playoff expansion, perhaps spurred by the financial hit from this. We're always talking about sort of playoff expansion in general, but in this context, the idea that maybe everybody could make more money off the playoff if the playoff was expanded, that idea, would that make sense to you, that maybe this financial situation would help push us faster to an 8 or 16 team playoff?
Again, I think anything's worth considering. I do. I just think that until we know this season what we're dealing with, I think it's hard to even have conversations like that. I think those are all good ideas. I think in brainstorming sessions, it's all good to bring up. I have some great ideas too. But until we know our parameters, it's hard to make any decisions. So I love the ideas. I think they're all great conversations, because we may need to go into a situation where we have to be creative this year. Moving forward, I mean, that's too far down the road. So I think everything's on the table. And so, yeah, I think we got to listen to all those conversations. And more ideas, the better.
Do you want to share any of your brainstorming ideas?
Yeah, really, they kind of asked me at the Big Ten just to kind of keep a lot of the conversations, to ourselves, and then, once we decide on something, we'll come out of there and have something that we support. But I will share that, I think talking to Mick and talking to different people throughout the country, that the 6-week window is a great starting point. I don't know if that's exactly what we go to, but the 6-week return to play is definitely something that is a starting point. We go from there, and the medical authorities and those type of people will help us with that exact time frame. And with that, I think you can create models, whatever those are, whether it's moving the season back or whatever. And so I think those are all the things that we're just going to keep diving into week after week. And once we get more information and more brain power together on this thing, then we'll have something we can get behind.
Thanks, Brian.
Next up, Tim May from Lettermen Row with Joey Kaufman on deck. Tim?
Yeah, just for my two questions, I wanted to ask a follow-up real quick on that. Ryan, so there seems to be universal agreement that maybe a 6-week preseason would be best for most people once you get back into this. Is that what you're picking up on?
I think that's the start of it, Tim. I think that's where, people are just trying to start to build this thing, but a lot of people have to weigh in on that. I know that some people think we can do it in 4. Some people say we need 8. 6 is kind of in between. And then what do those look like? But yeah, there's a lot of committees they're involved in this right now that are talking about those very things. And at the end of the day, it's going to come down to a lot of the medical authorities. And so, as coaches, we just need to give our input of what we think, the minimum would be to go play a game. And so, 6 weeks is kind of the starting point, but where it goes from there, we'll see.
Yeah. And, real quick, what can linemen, spring practices are as much for linemen as any other position, but especially they get to run into each other and really, hone their skills, so to speak. But what can linemen, especially during this downtime, what can they be doing to be maintaining some semblance of an edge?
It's hard. I think, the first thing they have to do is they have to keep their weight, their body weight. A lot of those guys need to put on weight. A lot of them need to lose weight. And so that's a huge indicator for them. And so that keeping their body weight and their body fat is important. So their eating habits are critical for big guys like that. I mean, we spend so much time on a daily basis through our nutrition and through strength and conditioning, sports science, on their body weight and their body composition. So that's huge. And then, for the guys who can lift and stay strong and keep their strength, I mean, that's really, really important. and then keeping the cardio up. It's hard to certainly do much for certain guys, in terms of technique if they don't have the means or, maybe, again, they're in the middle of the city or something like that. They don't have anything to work with. There are some people who have, family members or with some football background that can kind of put them through things, but brothers or everyone's so different. But at the end of the day, those are the things that those guys are concentrating on.
Yeah. Hey, for me, how are you guys? What are y'all able to do for the fellas who were on the men? The physical comeback trail. I mean, who had little touch-up surgeries during the winter. Who were, you guys were watching. We're going to be sitting out of spring and stuff. But have y'all been able to have any contact with those guys, or how are you monitoring, I guess, their progress?
We're monitoring them biweekly. And Sean Barnhouse do an excellent job of the guys who, everyone's different based on what they had done or surgery or anything like that. But we're monitoring their rehab. Some of them are able to do their rehab at home. Other guys who are local can use the crane on campus. Woody's closed, but they do have those resources with the crane. And so, we're all over those guys. And I think Sean's doing a really good job of making sure that they have what they need. We can send them bands and different things to help them with the rehab as well, based on where they are.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Next up, Joey Kaufman from the Columbus Dispatch with Heather Dinich on deck. Joey?
Ryan, thanks for taking time to do this. Had a couple questions about the draft. I'll start with Jeff Okuda. He seems like a guy, until his junior season, never had been a full-time starter. It wasn't until last year where he had his first pick. So it seems like his college career really had quite a rise, and him being talked about now as a possible top 10, top 5 pick. Where did he really make the biggest leap in the last year?
Well, I think a lot of guys make that leap in year 2 to 3. I see it a lot, and it's with leadership, it's with approach, it's with a lot of things, and I just think it all came together for Jeff. I think, having Jeff Hafley, they really hit it off. I think, his approach and just his being 3 years into the program, all those things just kind of added up for him. And I think when you look at the timeline of a lot of our players, that's pretty typical of when guys really turn it on. You look at, the season J.K. had and Chase and Jeff. So, no, I think that it was just kind of the natural, evolution of his career. And he was always very, very talented. I mean, it's never like anyone's surprised that he's going to be a top 5 pick. We always kind of saw that in him, and I think he just really took off this season.
And as far as J.K. goes, he's competing with probably a few other running backs to be the first running back pick, Jonathan Taylor, some other guys. Where do you kind of see J.K. standing out among some of the other running backs and just his future as an NFL player?
I think his future will be really strong because he can do a lot of things. And I don't know the other guys really in the draft in terms of where he compares with those people. But from what I'm hearing, he's got a chance to be the first guy taken in the running backs. And so, I think he's going to project really well because I think his skill set is versatile. He runs. He can do a lot of things. He can run the zone scheme. He can run a gap scheme. He can protect. He can run routes. I think he's kind of shown that he can do all those things, and he's such a great kid with a great work ethic. So if you combine all those things, he's a pretty attractive draft pick.
Thanks, Ryan.
Next up, Heather Dinich with ESPN.com and Matt McCoy on deck. Heather?
Ryan, how would you feel about playing a season that was only conference games?
Obviously, any football is better than no football, and I think it kind of depends on how this all shakes out. But we'll do whatever we need to do, and we'll make it work, whatever they tell us the parameters are, and we'll adapt and we'll play. So we know that with this time, there's a lot of unique situations. So we're okay with adapting. We obviously love to play the whole season and expecting to play the whole season, but if that's what happens, then we'll figure it out.
as a follow-up, I wanted to ask you about, as far as your players returning and their health, ideally, what would you like to see as far as testing all of them or not returning until a vaccine is ready? What's the ideal health scenario for you in your mind to happen before you bring them all back?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't really have the answer to that because I'm going to lean on the experts on that because that's not my expertise. And I don't know how that works, and so I'm just going to rely on the doctors and all the medical people and people at the university to kind of give me some guidelines on that and give us some guidelines on that. And then once we get those guidelines, we'll adapt. But we're ready for a new norm. We're ready for understanding that, behavior and the way we act and the way we go about our daily routines are going to be different. And once we're kind of given those guidelines, then we'll go from there. But we know that it's probably not going to be the same as it's been.
Folks, we just have about 4 more minutes to go, so we're not going to be able to get to everyone. But next up, Matt McCoy, 610 WTVN with Bill Landis on deck. Matt?
All right. Thanks, Ryan, for doing this. I know this is such a unique situation. I guess you try to make lemonade out of lemons. I'm just wondering, coaching like this, you and your staff being away from the team, is there anything that you're finding out that is going to, when hopefully things start get back to normal, that is going to make you better out of this? I don't, whether it's, you were talking about communication, are you finding out things about communicating with you and your staff? Is there anything that you can experience doing this that is going to help you going forward?
I do. I think that there'll be some new ways that we go about recruiting and communicating and using these teleconference things to help us with recruits and just get in front of them. I think for our team, it's going to make us stronger in that it gives them some personal accountability and not always having a coach bark at them. And I think the last thing it's going to do is bring our team closer together, because I think when you just talk to our team right now and our coaches, we just miss each other. And that's probably the hardest part of all this. We don't get to hang around and be around our team. And that's the thing. I keep telling the guys, I miss you guys and just can't wait to get back together. I think those are probably the top 3.
And one other thing about the draft, there's a lot of talk about Chase, Jeff, and J.K. They're going to be near the top of the draft. I'm wondering, and this may be a hard question because I know you like all your guys, but are there any other guys, whether it's, Damon Arnett, Jordan Fuller, Malik Harrison, B-line guys, the wide receivers, that you are looking at and going, man, somebody that's going to pick them down the road is going to get a steal out of this? Is there anybody that jumps to mind?
Well, I think, I say this to the people who ask me, the coaches and the GMs. I can't tell you where to pick these guys because I don't know what value you have and who else is out there. But, to say that there's a lot of better corners in the country than Damon Arnett, I'd love to see them. You talk about competitive and versatility and just toughness, the way he played all season. I want him on my team. KJ Hill and his clutch ability to make plays and get open inside and run routes. Again, I just look at Jonah Jackson. You look at Devon Hamilton. To me, these guys are going to be on rosters for a long time. Now, again, what they value them and where they pick them, that's their business. But I just think we have a lot of guys who are in this draft who, whether they get drafted or even some of those free agents, are going to be hanging around the NFL for a long time for a lot of reasons.
Thanks, Ryan.
Bill Landis from The Athletic with Teddy Greenstein on deck. Bill?
Thanks, Jerry. Hey, Ryan. When you guys hired Terry, you talked about enhancing the defense, diversifying the scheme a little bit with some of his expertise. I'm wondering how much of that you're able to get accomplished as you guys meet virtually as a staff and with the players, and how much of that might be held back until you're all able to get back on the field together.
I just think that it's hard for college kids to do much football learning without body repping it. I do think we can get some done, and I think the staff is doing a great job of putting those installs together and getting organized moving forward. But, you can go install 1, install 2, install 3. By the time you get to install 4, most of the kids already forgot install 1. It's just kind of how it goes. I think if you have a veteran group, like if you have, Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, they have those reps under their belt, they can do a better job in that environment. But when you have, young college kids who don't have thousands and thousands of reps under their belt, it's hard, I think, to do much learning like this. I think, you can teach it to them, but until they actually body rep it, I think it's very difficult. So I think that we're teaching it. We're very well organized. We know how we want to attack this, but until we realize how much time we have to get ready for the season, then we'll figure out what we can get really good at.
And then just quickly with adding Trey to the running back room, what was it about his skill set and what you saw on film and in person of him at Oklahoma that makes you think he'll blend well with your guys' run scheme?
Well, I mean, he can do a lot of things. I mean, he's big, strong, powerful, got good feet in the hole. He can break tackles. He can run routes out of the backfield. He can pass protect. I mean, he's another versatile guy and strong, powerful, and he's very intelligent. Just talking to him and understanding his football IQ. So we're fired up. He's a Buckeye.
Thanks, Ryan.
And folks, unfortunately, we just have time for one final questioner here. We'll go with Teddy Greenstein from the Chicago Tribune. Teddy?
Jerry, thank you. Ryan, hope you're doing okay. Dr. Fauci spoke again today about the prospect of playing sports in empty stadiums. Do you think it's worth it to play college football in an empty stadium? And can you think of a sport that is so dependent on fans for atmosphere?
Well, I think football is as dependent as any sport, I guess, there would be for a lot of reasons. But my take has been, and Gene and President Drake, we'll keep talking about this as time goes on. But I think any football is better than no football. And so I think, again, my thought process in all this is that we need to look at all options. If the ideal situation arises, great. But if not, what are we going to do to try to come up with some sort of football, keeping everybody safe and healthy? But I think the biggest challenge with that is going to be, if it's not safe for the fans, then how is it safe for the players and for the coaches and those type of people? And hopefully with testing and all the different things that come up over the next couple of months, that we're able to answer those questions. But I certainly think it's worth talking about and exploring based on the parameters that are set here over the next, 3 to 4 months.
And if it does come to that, would it have any influence on strategy and, knowing that the other side can hear a lot of your communication?
I think it would be eerie for sure. Just thinking about it and talking to you right now. I don't know if it would really change much, other than you wouldn't have to use silent cadence, obviously when you go on the road. But it would be certainly eerie to hear other people, screaming across the field.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
Great.
Yep.
Coach Day, thank you so much for your time. I know you got another conference call you got to jump on, but as always, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, Jerry, just again, and for everybody, I just want to let you know, thinking about you and pulling for everybody here. I know it's tough times, and there's a lot of people going through a lot of stuff financially, and just so you know, I'm supporting you guys, and anything I can ever do for you, just let me know.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe below to get the latest videos from Lettermen Row.
We got Lettermen Live, we've got the practice report, we got rapid reaction. Hey, and we got Buck IQ with Zach Bourne.
For sure. We got recruiting breakdowns with Berm. We got whatever you need. Ohio State football and Ohio State athletics, we've got you covered here at Lettermen Row.